Okay, we are almost there. In this fourth and final segment, we're going to talk about a type of control flow known as if statements. So here's the basic structure of an if statement. It should look pretty familiar by now. If some testable Boolean condition is met, colon, new line, indent, then do some actions. And it's simply a way of Python to direct the flow of code to make these actions happen, or on the other hand, to prevent these actions from happening. Before we go further, I just want to review the various operators that we can use in Python to construct a testable Boolean condition in an if statement. Katie introduced these in lessons 2 and 3. So there are the comparison operators. Of course, double equals, does not equal, more than equal, more than or equal to, less than, and less than or equal to. And then there are the logical operators, and or, which can join two Boolean expressions together, and not, which turns true to false and false to true. And then the membership operators, which test whether a value is in or not in a string or a list, and the identity operators, which test whether one object is or is not the same as another object. We can use all of these in if statements. So here's a very simple if statement. Set a variable x equal to 5. If x is greater than 5, print x as positive. So what happens? Well, Python encounters this if statement. It tests the Boolean condition, finds that x is indeed greater than 0. So it executes this print statement. X is positive. Okay, but what if x is -3? Well, if we run this code, nothing's going to be printed because Python will realize that this Boolean statement, it evaluates to false. X is in fact not greater than 0. So it ignores everything inside this if statement and it just ends. Next, I want to complicate things a bit by introducing the elif statement. So elif statements can only exist directly following an if statement. And elif is a contraction of else if. It basically says that if this Boolean condition, number 1, in the if statement is not satisfied, then Python is going to move on and it will check whether this condition, number 2, in the elif statement is satisfied. And only if condition number 1 is false, but condition number 2 is true, then Python will execute action number 2 here. And that's the cat there in the background. And here's the thing, you can have as many elif statements as you want. So Python will simply go down the line, checking these Boolean conditions, and it will stop at the first statement that evaluates to true. Only 2 here, but you can imagine there being more. So for instance, if that's condition 2, Python will execute action number 2. And then it will ignore this third statement. It won't even check condition number 3. It'll just move on. But if all these conditions are false, Python will just ignore all the actions and keep going. And there's one last option. It's the else statement. And this is a final backup for when the if statement and all of the elif statements fail to evaluate to true. That happens here in conditions 1 through 3 are all false. Python will end up at this else statement, which has no condition attached to it, and it will execute action number 4. So there you have it. You can have a solitary if statement. You can also add as many elif statements as you want, or not. And finally, if you want this backup, you can add this else statement at the very end of your code block. So I'm going to finish this lesson with a very simple Seattle example. And don't worry, we'll get more practice with these statements in class on Thursday. So given a variable representing the likelihood of precipitation, that is the % chance of rain, these if statements here are going to determine what gets printed. So if it's higher than a 50% chance, I'm usually pretty sure that I want to wear a rain jacket. But if it's less than a 20% chance of rain, I think I'll be safe, or at least I'll take the risk. But otherwise, which means between 20% and 50%, I'm not really sure what to do. So in this case, likelihood precip is 80%. So that first statement will evaluate to true and it will get executed. Now, what if the likelihood of rain is 5%? Well, in that case, that jacket will be staying at home, as this second statement, this Elif, tells us here. But what if it's a 30% chance of rain? In that case, both the if and the elif statements will evaluate to false, and Python will land on this else statement. I don't know what to do. Okay, that's actually a wrap for this lesson. Thank you so much for sticking with me, and I will hopefully see you all on Thursday. Thanks.